All right, so I'm going to take some time to break down this eccentric focus block that I'm doing. The idea, though, in terms of the integration of Flywheel, which is important to note here, is the compelling research on the different type of contraction, right? The consistent, constant tension. There's no isometric either in the contracted or relaxed position. So when you're thinking about this, like 40XO or in this case an 80XO tempo, you want to really compile that into it's probably just a two-digit number here of a 20, an XOXO, or a instead of that being an XX. Uh, but we'll dive into that. So the real premise of what I'm trying to do here, did a strength deficit, looked at my counter movement versus non-counter movement, was about 1.05, so it's extremely concentrically oriented. So I got a lot of gas left in the tank in terms of increasing eccentric strength. So focal point will be focusing on this progression of high eccentric total time under tension, trying to overload that eccentric with the weight release hook strategy, and then trying to increase that eccentric time under tension, metabolic stress from a stronger contraction profile, as well as maybe just getting a little bit different type of contraction rates. So you'll see XOXO tempo more so than I normally come to. So it kind of gets in this idea of we're creating almost uh, a contrast type of training approach between the B1 in this case being more of a maximal strength and then or absolute strength, and then B2 getting into, or C1 being this high rate of force development. So we'll break it down. All right, so the first day, one of the big limiting factors I have, I'm very wide ISA, so always going to focus on hip internal rotation. Really like John Quint's essentially grooving this pattern. So just trying to increase one, more awareness cortical mapping wise. So what is my proprioceptive space in that joint, and then increase the space in that joint through pails and rails, and then finishing off with some sort of higher level type of cars. I highly recommend his book, Lineman Specialist Training Manual. That was really good. And then I'm doing a weight release hook protocol. So day one here, you can see in this back squat weight release hook, I'm going to do a 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1. So that means the first rep would be weight release hooks. Second and third rep will be without. I'll take a break. And then I'll do one rep again with weight release hooks. And then I'll do one rep with without it. So I'm going to have a total of 2 reps with weight release hooks and 3 reps without, accumulating a total of, what's the math on that? 5 reps. The notion here, though, to think about is I have 2 reps of 80XO tempo and then 3 reps with an XOXO tempo. Fatigue will start to accrue. Still have a lot of bandwidth eccentrically. So I got this protocol from Alan Bishop. I thought it was a really creative way to leverage eccentric weight release hooks, doing a almost like cluster-like effect or a rest pause, as well as trying to increase my time under tension later, which I think would be a big asset. As well as, the game for me is try to have increased rate of force development, faster eccentric, trying to leverage both. And I did 4 rounds of that. And then I get into my flywheel protocol. So as I mentioned so far in this module, I think there's still benefit to leveraging compound closed kinetic chain exercises. And I thought this would be a good way to kind of show that. So potentiating strategy, let's get snatch grip RDL, 40XO tempo with 6 reps. Then I did flywheel, I did 12 reps for a high pull. So keeping that same hingy type pattern, 12 violent reps. And then now I'm looking at, for the last one, a high rate of force development thing. So a 24 rep kettlebell swing. So from a time under tension, I got 24 seconds on my actual first exercise. Then I look at it from the next wave of that C2. I have roughly about 12 seconds. Each rep's going to take about a second there. So now I'm up to 18 seconds. And then a little bit under a second for the 24. So I'm getting about a 40-second set per set. I'm going to do 3 rounds of that. Pretty metabolically taxing, so a lot of metabolic stress accruing, building up, definitely hitting the hamstrings pretty hard. Muscle soreness after the first time I did this, about 3 or 4 days. I will do a separate actual module breaking down the nutrition behind this, because I did some pretty advanced level supplementation behind this between phosphatidic acid, BPC 157, some cool stuff I really want to dive into, but that'll be a separate thing. And then, as always, I'm going to finish off with a pretty violent eccentric Nordic. Goal by the end of the summer is to be able to do a full Nordic without touching my hands. So I did 4 with an 80XO tempo. Pretty much just went to failure for week 1. I'm going to progress that up over the course of the 3 weeks. The other note here is over the 3-week meso, I'm going to increase weight release hook weight, not necessarily bar weight. So the idea is to try to get up to 100% 1RM, 30% on my weight release, 70% on the bar. So I'll do, let's say my 1RM was 130 front squat, probably 140, maybe 150 back squat right now, nothing great. So using a 100% load on the bar and the weight release hook. So that means I would do 120 bar and then 30 kilos on the weight release hooks on week number 3. I'll do a 20 kilo weight release hook and then a 10 kilo weight release hook on week 1. So you make smaller jumps, probably get a little bit more taxing on that. Just human nature of me, knowing what I'm getting into probably means I'm going to default to the easier strategy, just being honest about it. But making a smaller jump on the weight release hook, so going maybe like a, instead of 30, 20, 10, doing a 30, 25, 10, 20 type of breakdown. All right, similar protocol on day 2 right here. So again, working hip, shoulder, external rotation, or shoulder, external rotation, just because that's my limiting factor because I'm a wide ISA. Developing that cortical mapping, increasing the space of the joint, and then really wiring in that pattern. Bench press, weight release hooks again, same protocol as day 1. Then I get into my my flywheel protocol for hypertrophy on day 2. So I open up with a sternum pull-up, trying to get my sternum to the bottom of the bar. Keeping tempo here, 6 reps with a 4-0 exo tempo. Then we'll get into a flywheel single arm row. This one is going to be a little bit longer, right? So we talked about 12 seconds. This could be 24 seconds. So now I'm 48 seconds. And then I do a cable pull down, which is going to be a little bit slower now. So, probably getting into this 60 to 70 second range. So a little bit more muscular endurance. Definitely going to hit that pretty hard in terms of that setup there. So, metabolically, really challenging. Also, too, very interesting feel from a muscle soreness. I could tell you this definitively, the difference between like day 1 and day 2, just a lot of stress in general. Really, really tiresome. But if I had to pick the harder of the 2 days, probably day 1 from a global fatigue, but day 2 would be more of a localized muscle fatigue. And then you can see how I did this on the next coming days. I really wanted to set up for a little bit more time under tension focus. So I did 3 reps with the 8-0 exo tempo for 6 seconds for the deficit trap bar deadlift, about 2 inches there in terms of extra range with a low handle as well. So pretty much the handles were pretty much in my lateral malleolus. Pretty taxing. And then I did my flywheel protocol there. I did trap bar roof foot elevated split squat, 3 reps each side. I actually bumped that up to 6 reps each side because I felt like 3 reps was just not going to be enough. So again, I'll make that note here, 6 reps each side. Then I went flywheel split squat, about a quarter split squat. Range of motion's tough. I've been playing around with some actual like blocks to set up on. I got both the DC blocks at the gyms as well as the TIB bar guys ones. They're all fine. But something just to elevate that foot so you don't hit the actual base of the actual flywheel. If you got a K-box, it might actually be a little bit tougher, so you might need a little shorter handle. If you're playing around with more vertical column, might be a little bit more horizontal, so a little bit more forward deceleration. I just chose to get a little bit more vertical in there to get this more vertical displacement up and down. And I did a contralateral position. So if my right leg was doing the quarter split squat, my left arm was holding and vice versa. And again, that's 12 each side. So now it's getting pretty long. Then I'm going to finish off with some rhythm squats. So just a quarter knee bend, up and down, up and down, up and down, trying to get rhythm. My big thing on that is you try to unlock ankle, knee, and hip and sit straight down, up and down, up and up and down, try to keep constant tension. This one was not as taxing as day 1, but fairly taxing. You probably could use a little bit heavier load on the rhythm squats, to be honest. But just fatigue is accrued, being a little bit more conservative on this day. But that's something you could probably put a pretty good weight on because you're pretty strong in that position. All right, and the last day I did a lean away pull-ups for 6 sets for 3 reps with the 8-0 exo tempo. Finished off with some push press, flywheel single arm press. I actually changed that to a lateral raise because I felt like the press was going to hit, and then a cable rear fly. So push press, just getting some momentum, down 4, 3, 2, 1, and then did a little rear single arm fly, which if I had to be honest, I wish I had some smaller wheels because I definitely think I was cheating a little bit, so I was trying to lean into it and then pull. So it's almost like an overloaded eccentric in that way, a little bit of a cheat lateral raise. So smaller wheels. That's the continual breakdown here over the course of the summer as well. You're thinking small wheel, high velocity, but also probably more congruent for isolation-based exercises like a lateral raise. Bigger wheels, more force. And we'll talk about that from a metabolic stress versus a force perspective or tension perspective. Then we'll talk about it from a force velocity perspective. So we got a lot of things to unpack this summer with flywheels, and I'm excited to talk about it. And then cable reel fly, just getting a crossover X there. So all in all, like I know the beginning of the weight release hooks, the more elongated range of motion type of approach. Those are some strategies to think through. But the real meat and potatoes, this is that flywheel protocol. Big compound movement, looking at a pretty high threshold, high tension strategy with that flywheel, and then something in terms of isolation or something where it can just get good elongated set for 24 reps, thinking rate of force development, thinking isolated, thinking about time and attention in that area, trying to get a longer duration. It's a lot of things to play around with. One could argue I could probably have a little bit more continuity from rate of force development in C3 for that exercise following the C2. But I just kind of want to get a little bit experimental. Definitely metabolic, really more so than anything. I mean, I've grouped so many patterns on my kettlebell swing. I don't know if looking at that from a high rate of force development type of strategy is probably the right way to go because it's such a hardwired pattern. I've done 200 swings unbroken, so like, all in all, like I probably one could argue of like maybe exercise selection should be more targeted isolation exercise to create tension or metabolic stress in general. But that would be the only feedback I would give myself on this if I want to get hypercritical. All right, guys, hope you guys enjoy, and definitely leave some comments in the forum. It'll definitely help me out.